recording. And we'll get started today with yin. Get creative with your props if you don't have any. And let's start today on our stomach. So you can come to hands and knees first. Lie down onto your stomach. Tops of the feet will rest down on the mat. And then two options with the arms. You can either stack the hands one on top of the other, rest the forehead straight down. Some people find more comfort to bring the arms down by the sides and turn the head in one direction. So you can explore both and see which one feels better. Just find one that helps you start to relax, calm down. Even if you're showing up today in a calm state of mind, it's really a matter of quieting everything else outside of your practice, arriving on your mat so that you can be all here. We all know what it feels like to be physically in one place, but mentally in another. Start to lengthen the breath in and out through the nose, up and down the back of the throat. And the feet can relax here. So if you feel like you're hugging the outer ankles in, you can let them roll out. You can let the big toes point in toward one another or toward the center of the mat. Letting go of any effort. And you can start to notice what's starting to change. With our yoga practice, it's nice to have a time that you are coming to your mat. So same time every week or whatever it may be. Sometimes that helps you drop in a little bit easier. You start to create that habit. So it's a little less effort, a little less thought. Your body just knows. Lift the head up. Let's get the arms out to the sides in a T shape. So stretch the arms out wide. Get that left hand in line with the left shoulder. Look to the right. Rest the left side of the head down onto the mat. Right hand comes in. So palm of the hands resting down on the mat. Roll back slowly onto the left shoulder. So let's starting to get a little deeper in that left shoulder. The head's resting down. So if it doesn't touch, you can use a pillow, a blanket, something to rest the head so the neck isn't having to hold the head. If it easily rests down on the mat, that's great. And this right hand, you want to find a place for it where it offers you some support, but it's not working too hard. So you can move it around, see how close you want to get it to the body. A lot of that depends on where that right hip is, how far away from the mat it is. So we're just trying to stack the hips here. Right foot can stagger in front of the left, or it can go behind if it doesn't feel comfortable stacked. Keep the legs long. So they're stretching out toward the back of the mat. And you're not going into your deepest shoulder opening. So try not to force it. We're just starting out. Keep the shoulders away from the ears if they feel like they're starting to hike up. A deep inhale in through the nose. Slowly back out. Roll back onto your stomach and you'll start to switch sides. So left hand can come into the mat, right arm reaches out to the side. Please look, make sure the right hand is in line with the right shoulder. Then you can start to look to the left, rest the right side of the head down onto the mat and roll back slowly onto the right shoulder. Finding an opening that's working for you on this side. And when you're practicing, if you're showing up with an uneven situation in the upper back. So don't feel like especially if that's happening, then this opening is not going to be in the same place. Your body's going to look a little bit different in the shape side to side. But it might feel like a similar opening side to side, even though it looks different. And once you have it, start to ease up. Where can you make this more gentle? And roll back onto your stomach. Once you get there, let's bring the forearms underneath you. So coming into Sphinx pose, we open up the shoulders a little bit. So this might feel a little bit different. You're bringing the forearms underneath you. You're trying to get the elbows right underneath the shoulders and the legs stretch back behind you. So here you do want a little bit of pressure on the top of the feet. So the outer ankles hug in a little bit. Hips are down on the mat. Belly's lifting a little bit away from the mat. So it's not as tight as you can lift it. You just don't want to press the navel into the mat. And then the chest starts to push forward, shoulders start to broaden, and you look down the bridge of the nose. Fingers are spread, but the hands can rest. So you don't need to grip anything with the hands. And if it feels like the forearms are going forward or more back, you want them to go more back, almost like you're going to slide the mat back behind you. Not a lot of effort, but just if you're going to go in one direction over the other, that's the way to go. Tail points back toward the heel. So that keeps your length in the lower back. And the rest is the breath. Of the back bends we have to choose from, this one does require some effort, especially if you're not used to it. But those of you that are used to it, maybe think back to when you first started doing this and notice if the length of the hold doesn't mean as much anymore. Maybe it's a little bit easier. So it is a nice thing to continue to practice getting more comfortable with these longer holds. And if you do need a break, you take one in the position that we started in. So stacking the hands, resting the forehead down, or you can even bring the arms back behind you and turn the head to one side. And you just jump back in when you're ready. And you'll start to release. Bring the hands down to the mat so they're on the sides of the ribs, and then come up to hands and knees. So we'll set up for child's pose. I'll give you a couple of options. If you're dealing with a lower back condition, maybe you keep the knees and the feet together and then sit the hips back, walk the hands forward, forehead comes down. And if you don't typically do child's pose this way, this could be nice. Another option, big toes together, slight gap between the knees, sit the hips back and you listen to the knees, forehead comes down. You could bring a bolster or a large pillow between the underneath the abdomen, just between the knees. So you could do it that way if you want to lift things up. But it could be nice to do it without props every once in a while. If you do that, then you just turn the head to one side. You could even prop this up with the block, clasp the arms underneath you. You don't even really need the block. You could just use the forearms. You're going to do it without props today. You choose what's best for you. Make sure you're as comfortable as you can get yourself, which might mean that the hips go a little bit higher if the knees need more space. Arms out in front of you is an opening for the upper body. So you can decide if you want more of an opening there. If you don't, You can start to bend the elbows, let the elbows be heavy. They can rest on the mat. You could even bring the arms back behind you if the upper body's had enough. That also depends on the height of the hips, too. If the hips are up real high, it's hard to get the arms back behind you. So sometimes I'll throw out options, and maybe it's not an option given the shape that you're in. I'm keeping my arms extended, but they're still relaxed. So even though the forearms aren't touching the mat, there's still a bend I can feel in the elbows, shoulders. We're trying to keep those away from the ears always. So you keep that space in the neck. And ideally, the forehead's resting on something. So if it doesn't reach the ground in front of you, maybe finding something to rest it on. Could be blanket, pillow, whatever you have, towel. And we'll start to lift the head up, walk the hands in. You'll come to seated. So you could be seated flat on the mat, cross-legged seat. You could be up on a block, a blanket, bolster. If you're dealing with any lower back pain, you want to make sure there isn't any rounding in the lower back when you're seated. So that might be a good cue to lift yourself up on a block. You still have a firm surface underneath you. So sitting up tall, can rest the hands down on the knees, but let the head come down. So like nose toward the chest, but keep the shoulders wide. So chest is still lifted, nose is coming down. You're just letting the weight of the head start to stretch the back of the neck. But we don't want to collapse the chest. We want to keep that lifted and spreading. And we'll keep everything the same. Just bring the arms down by the side. So fingertips down to the mat, one on each side. Keep opening across the chest, letting the head come down. Then bring the left ear over toward the left shoulder. Keep reaching away with the right arm. Right hand, the palms facing behind you. You can stretch it out to the side. Maybe you take a half bind, bring that right arm behind the back, still reaching away with the left arm, left ear toward the left shoulder. All of that's still happening. But now we're getting into the shoulder again. Left hand can stay where it is, or you could rest it on top of the head. Really light. So you don't want to put much pressure at all. Opening up the right side of the neck. If you have the left hand on top of the head, gently bring it down. Bring the right hand out to the side. Chin back down toward the chest. Arms out to the side. Chest is still lifted. Shoulders away from the ears. And you'll start to bring the right ear over toward the right shoulder. Left palm turns to face behind you. Wrap the left arm behind the back. Doesn't matter where it goes. You're just trying to find that space in the left shoulder, chest area. Little support with the core. Keep the head leaning over to the right side. And maybe you bring that right hand up to the top of the head, just gently resting it. We'll start to set that right arm back down to the mat, left hand back down to the mat. Bring the chin back to the chest. Stay here, eyes still closed, maybe creating a little bit more length in the back side of the neck. Chest is still lifted. Shoulder blades, bottom just the shoulder blades are drawing into the back. So that's helping you widen across the chest. And slowly bring the left ear over toward the left shoulder. Bring the chin back to center. Go the other way. And you can take your time, just go side to side on your own in this half moon shape. You're looking for any cricks, kinks, anything going on in the neck. If you feel like you find one, you can stay in that spot and just breathe. If it feels good to keep it dynamic and just move side to side, you can do that. But it's a slow movement side to side. So we stay in this calm place, helping the nervous system reset. We hold so much tension in our necks without even realizing it, and the upper body. So it's nice to spend a little extra time seeing if we can release that, kind of start over, feeling more fresh for the day. And you'll finish the cycle that you're on, eventually coming back to where we started, the chin down toward the chest. Let the head hang, chest is lifted, broaden across the shoulders, and then start to bring the head back up. Keep the eyes closed. Just feel how long you can get the neck. So rise up through the crown of the head. Keep pulling the shoulders away from the ears. Blink open the eyes. Hands can come to the thighs. Then from here, let's bring the soles of the feet together. Knees wide, so coming into butterfly. Maybe you shift side to side. If you have the hips propped up, you can keep them propped up. And if you want to put support underneath the knees, you can do that with whatever you have, blocks, blankets, whatever it is. Sit up tall. Start to hinge forward. You're hanging onto the ankles, shins, maybe the inner edges of the feet. You can let the elbows come out, let the head and the neck go. And then there'll be some rounding in the upper back. That's okay. See what that feels like. You might be able to release the head a little easier after that work with the neck. And if rounding the upper back bothers the lower back, which sometimes happens, keep the length in the upper back. So keep reaching the heart forward over the toes. So you keep the back long, straight, no rounding. you're okay with the rounding, stay there. And no matter which option you choose with the spine, you're backing off on effort. So just go 3/4 of the way into the pose, maybe less. You'll bring yourself back up to seated. Use the hands to bring the knees back together. You can extend the legs. This next one, let's grab a bolster if you have one, a big pillow, or maybe even folded blankets. You can just stack them one on top of the other, 2 to 3, if you're doing that. So knees are going to bend. Bring this, whatever you're using, all the way up against the right hip. So knees are bent, hands come down on each side of the bolster. And let's bring the right side of the head down onto the bolster. So you're lying down to the bolster, nose and knees are pointing in the same direction. So feel what this feels like on your spine. Maybe you stay here. If you're looking for a deeper twist, you could lift the head and turn it to the right and rest the left side of the head down to the bolster. And that's a much deeper twist. So feel which one's better. You know you're here for a while. If it's too intense right out of the gate, maybe skip it. And if it becomes like it's too much over time, you can always lift the head and turn it the other way. And if you want padding between the knees or the legs, you can put something there too. That could be a good idea if you're dealing it with anything in the lower back. Anytime you have the knees together like this, if you put something between the knees, anything, blankets, block, pillow, it brings more space to the lower back. You can still do the twist. And if you have the head turned all the way around, lift it, rest the right side of the head down onto the bolster, feeling that release on the neck. It was turned the opposite direction for quite a while. And start to walk the hands in. Press yourself up away from the bolster. Bring the right hand over to the left and then turn around. So you're coming to seated with the bolster back behind you. You can come to a cross legged seat. Remember which shin's in front. That's probably the way you like to sit first. Sitting up tall with the hands on the knees. On the inhale, come forward over the right knee, then the left knee. On the exhale, hang on to the knees, round the spine, and you'll just keep going with the Sufi rolls in this direction as slow as you can. Eyes can be closed. Inhaling forward, exhaling back. Next time you're over the left knee, pause. Switch the direction of your circles. Go the other way over to the right knee. Exhale back, round the spine. Inhale forward. And these Sufi rolls are as big or as small as you want them to be. So don't feel like they need to be uh, any size. Just naturally feel your way into it. One more circle all the way around. You'll come back up to seated, soles of the feet to the mat. Bring the knees over to the left, hand on each side of the bolster. Bolster all the way up against the left hip. Knees are bent. If you want to put some padding between the knees, do so. Start to walk yourself down onto the bolster. And let's start by turning the head to the right. Rest the left side of the head down onto the bolster. See how this lands in the spine, how you feel. This might be good enough. Stay here. Or lift the head, turn it to the left, see how that feels. There's a big difference between the two and where you feel the twist. So get yourself set up to a place where you're feeling comfortable, and then you start to let go. So you're not driving the twist, you're just being in it. Eyes are closed, body's heavy. And if you have your head turned all the way around, lift it, rest the left side of the head down onto the bolster. Start to walk the hands in. Press yourself away from the bolster. Left hand comes over to the right. Turn around, coming to seated cross legged seat, but this time other shin in front. Maybe shift side to side so you feel even on the sit bones. Sitting up tall, bring the hands to the knees. On the inhale, come forward over the left knee, then the right knee. On the exhale, round. Real slow, Sufi rolls. Go in this direction. Take your time with it. Next time the chest hovers over the right knee, pause, go the other way, switch the direction. Let's even things out. One more circle all the way around. And you'll come back up to seated. You can set the prop behind you off to the side, turn to face the front of the mat if you're turned around. We'll do a forward fold, a seated forward fold. If you're dealing with lower back stuff, keep the knees bent, rest the chest on the thighs, clasp opposite elbows, let the head and the neck go. If your lower back is fine and you're comfortable with a seated forward fold, extend the legs out in front of you. Make sure you're even on the sit bones. Start to fold forward over the legs. Maybe palms up. That's always a nice thing to do so you don't reach. Let the head and the neck go. And you find some version of caterpillar. If you like a bolster on top of the legs, you're welcome to do that. Another good option is taking a block if the head's low enough, a block or two, resting the head down onto the block. Anytime we're in a shape, especially in yin or restorative, where we can rest the forehead on something, it's usually a good idea. And we'll start to bring ourselves back up to seated. If you have anything in front of you, set it off to the side. We'll use blocks if you have them. If you don't, not a big deal. You can do this without. But if you have two blocks, bring them together so that like they're one big block, and I have them the long way side by side, lowest height. And then you'll bring the feet just outside of the block, soles of the feet on the mat, bent knees. Come on down onto your back. Just make sure the blocks are within reach. And again, if you don't have blocks, just feet on the mat in front of you. And let's bring the left foot up on top of the block, wherever it's comfortable. Right ankle crosses over the left thigh. And you're coming into thread the needle, resting down on your back, heads resting on the mat. The hands don't need to do anything. You can do a light pressure of the outer right knee moving away from you. The right foot needs to be flexed whenever the knee's bent this way. Try to stay even on the hip. So sometimes we start to rock over to the right hip. Stay level. And sometimes we start to shift the hips. So one's higher than the other. You want to feel like they're even side by side. And this is the type of hip opening that might not feel like you're doing much, but you'll feel a difference at the end of the hold. And you'll bring the right foot down. If you have two blocks, right foot can land on that other block. If you're only using one block, you can scoot that block over to the right foot and bring the right foot on top of the block. No blocks, both feet are on the mat. Left ankle, right thigh, coming right over to the other side. So you want to hook the ankle on the outside of that right thigh so that the ankle bone isn't pressing into the meat of the thigh. That'll get uncomfortable over time. Press that outer left knee away from you a tiny bit, just so it's not coming in toward the left shoulder. Level off the hips. You should feel the back of the hips on both sides down on the mat. And you'll start to bring the left foot back down. If you have blocks underneath the feet, scoot them off to the side. You can just use the feet, slide them off to the side so they're out of the way. Feet are down on the mat in front of you. Bring the knees in toward the chest and then hang onto the knees with the hands. Open up the knees wide. You're coming into happy baby, but you need to back up a step because happy baby definitely builds intensity over time. So you can start with grabbing the backs of the thighs, maybe the calves. If you can easily reach down and grab the ankles, great. If you typically hang on to the feet and it's really easy, you can do that. Outer edges of the feet is more intense than inner edges of the feet. But maybe you just back up a whole lot and grab something that's way closer to the body than usual. You can always keep backing up over time if you start somewhere that's too deep. Hips are down on the mat. We're focused on the hip opening here and the spreading of the back. So you should feel the back on the mat, head resting heavy. No rocking though, side to side. See if we can keep this a static hold. Ideally, the knees are wider than the torso. If that doesn't require too much effort, if it does, skip it. An easy, happy baby, whatever that is for you. Looking back on the sequence that we've done today, I'm realizing that a lot of these poses are great for digestion. Happy baby is a good one for digestion. Twists are great for digestion. You don't want to do a twist on a full stomach though, so that's something to be aware of. Child's pose is great for digestion. And those Sufi rolls that we did when we sat with crossed legs and then moved the chest over from one knee to the other on the inhale and then exhale, rounding the spine. That's great too for digestion. So it wasn't the intention. It's just kind of how the practice came together. But maybe you earmark this one in case you're looking for that in the future. Okay, bring the knees in toward the chest. Give yourself a squeeze, close the eyes. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Exhale, Shavasana. So extend the legs out in front of you. You could use props if you want to, but today might be a good day without props. So I'll leave that to you. Arms down by the sides, palms face up. Lift the chest, get the shoulder blades underneath you. And if you feel like you'd rather have the hands on the body, place the hands on the body. With the eyes closed, let go of the breath control. Relax the legs. You don't want to be holding yourself anywhere. So see where you can let go of effort. I'll start to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Walk the feet in, bending the knees. Roll over to your right side, cradle the head and the arm. Try to keep the eyes closed if you can, just lying on your side for a moment. Use the left hand, press yourself up to a comfortable seat. Here we want to sit up tall. Eyes are closed, lengthening the elbows down toward the mat. Bring the hands together in front of you. Keep the chest lifted, slight bow of the head. Honor and acknowledge your heart and spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bringing the head back up, blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thanks for joining in today. Hope you feel great. I'll see you next time.